Hi, everyone, and welcome. We just opened up the room for our MBA webinar. While we're getting ready, if you don't mind, please type your name, your status of if you've committed to a school, if you're a first year, second year, what program you're in, incoming, outgoing student. Love to know a little bit more about the audience today. So welcome to our webinar. Can type that right into the chat. I see more students are coming in, so thank you. Welcome, everyone. We would ask that you please say your name, your school, your status, what year you are, if you're incoming, outgoing, first year, second year, and what programs you're with. Thank you for joining us. My name is Michelle Lederhose. I'm the Director of Undergraduate Programs. I'm excited to be here for the Forte Week 6 of Log In and Level Up, speaking with the MBA audience today. Your MBA is a timeless asset. Now is a great time to invest in yourself and your future with your MBA. We have a panel today of MBA career services reps and corporate partners who will reinforce why your MBA is an asset. Again, for those of you just jumping on and joining us, please use the chat box to go ahead, introduce yourself, your name, your school if you've committed, or if you're a first year, second year, or if you're just a recent grad, and what school you're with and what program you're with. It really helps our audience and our panelists know who you are. I'm excited to have you all here, so thanks for joining us. With that, we have a really robust discussion for you today, some moderated questions, and then we will use the Q&A box in the Zoom function that you can ask your questions. So we've prepared some questions, and then of course we want to save some time at the end for your questions as well. So I'm going to introduce Jessica Drash. Jessica is the Director of Operations and Business Planning at T-Mobile. I'm excited that Jessica is from the Foster School of Business at University of Washington. She was a Forte MBA Fellow and the recipient of the E.D. Hunt Inspiration Award in 2018. So we'd love to see our corporate partners and our amazing fellows come back, and I'm so excited for Jessica to lead us in this conversation and introduce the panelists as well. So Jessica?
Sure, well thank you so much, Michelle, and I'm so excited to be here. I was telling the other panelists that my connection to Forte continues to stay as close as I can possibly keep it, because it's been such an important part of, or was such an important part of my MBA journey. I absolutely chose the school that I did in part because I got to be a Forte Fellow there, and the network of other Forte Fellows turned out to be a really important part of the fabric of the experience for me. So any opportunity that I have to do things like this with Forte, I always look forward to doing. I'm really excited to introduce you to your panelists, and I'm actually going to let them introduce themselves. So we have two post-MBA women who are in their careers now, and then we have two women who are representing career management for MBA programs. So Moira, why don't I hand it over to you for a quick introduction?
Awesome, thanks. Hi everyone, my name's Moira. I graduated from UCLA Anderson as a full-time MBA 2 years ago now. It doesn't seem like that much time has passed, it's crazy, but an awesome experience for me getting my MBA and also my post-MBA experience. I've been working as a consultant for ZS Associates, where if you guys haven't heard, as kind of a boutique healthcare management consulting firm. So yeah, happy to talk about my experience, really excited to be on this panel, so thanks.
Thanks, Moira. And keeping with our recent post-MBAs, how about Cheryl? Why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Cheryl. I graduated in 2018 from Tepper School of Business at Carnegie Mellon University. I am currently in Philadelphia with Cigna in their financial development program. So same as Moira, I was a full-time MBA student, and I had a great experience during my time at Tepper, and am excited about the conversation.
Awesome. Glad to have you, Cheryl. And Abby, how about over to you?
Everyone, Abby Scott. I'm head of the Career Management Group at Berkeley Haas, a job I've been in for a little while now. Prior to coming back to work in higher ed, I worked in the tech sector, so I'm happy to speak to that as well.
Wonderful. And I know that Kelly's, I think there's been some technical difficulties with getting Kelly on, but maybe she'll be able to give us an introduction a little bit later. But for now, why don't we go ahead and, I'm sorry, what was that?
Here. Yep, she was able to.
Oh, she is? Oh, okay,
Yep.
excellent. Kelly, are you able to introduce yourself?
Absolutely.
There we go.
Hi, everyone. Kelly McClellan from University of Minnesota Carlson School in Minneapolis. I work with MBA students in 3 of our programs at all stages of their career and have been with the school since, 2014, so 6 years now. Really excited to talk today about the MBA and where you are at your journey and where you want to go next. And so looking forward to the conversation today.
Yeah, so I love the way this panel is structured because it's a mix of women who've finished their MBAs recently and have a perspective on kind of the value they got from that, and women who are actively engaged in the recruitment and guidance and let's call it stewardship of current MBA students. So I think a really good, well-rounded perspective on the value of the MBA. So as we're thinking about all of the craziness that's happening in the world right now between the, COVID-19 and the impact it's had on the workplace and also on just the experience of education, as well as the economic implications, which I think we're still kind of learning what those will be. I've been thinking a lot about how that's going to impact my MBA colleagues, as well as students who are going into those programs. And I bet that some of you who've dialed in for the webinar today are wondering some of these questions about will the value of the MBA really make sense during this time? And so I wanted to just start by having a foundational discussion of what really is the value of the MBA. And I want to tee that up by asking Moira and Cheryl to first give us your perspective. How did the MBA impact your career? How did you leverage your MBA?
Yeah, I can jump in here first. So honestly, I could not be happier with receiving an MBA and deciding to go back to school. It was a really tough decision for me at the time. I was working in consulting and thought I wanted to move more into the strategy side of things and actually get more of a business perspective because I was working a little bit more in audit. So went to UCLA and loved the full-time program, but also saw benefits of the other programs as well. And honestly, I could not have had the position that I have today with ZS, working on the forefront of a lot of strategy with biotech companies and working with specifically stakeholders at my clients that are really high up, and having this kind of relationship that I've been able to build that I wouldn't have been able to get after, multiple years of just being in industry without getting an MBA. So honestly, I attribute a lot of my success and happiness at my current job through getting an MBA and going to UCLA. So could not stress the value of getting it enough.
Yeah. And Cheryl?
Yeah, so I would echo a lot of what Moira said, right? So if I look at my career pre and post MBA, there are really 3 specific things that are starkly different to me. So first, it's the work itself, right? And the opportunities to take on a lot more high impact kind of projects. And 2, it's the people who I work with, the access to folks higher up the corporate ladder. And 3, it's the overall network that I built through the MBA, right? So earning that MBA really opens up a lot of opportunities, especially like opportunities to be in leadership programs, such as the one I am in currently. And it really helps expose you to different business areas and really learn, how the company is making money, what the company strategy is. And, if I think about just my time at Cigna itself in the FDP program, I've only been here 2 years and I've already worked with the international offices, visited them, worked with their CFOs, and now I'm moved on to the pharmacy area, and that's just within 2 years. And you really get exposure to a lot of business, finance officers and CFOs, CEOs, and really people who drive the progress and the future of the business and are making the high level decisions that are really impacting the company overall. And I think lastly, just the network that you build through the MBA program, right? I think that is really the best part of getting that MBA. It's you end up spending a lot of time with these people, you know, whether it's in person or virtually. And these are really lasting relationships that you, I don't think would have built otherwise. And definitely in my case, I wouldn't have, you know, made these connections if not for the MBA. So, you know, I really think that there are certain benefits that you get from your job experience, and there are benefits that you get from your MBA experience. And really the marriage of the two is what would make you really valuable to your company, or, you know, as an ideal candidate to a future employer. So I think really getting the MBA has a lot of benefits that have, you know, a really lasting effect for anyone's career.
Yeah, that's great. I love the framework that you've laid out there. I mean, I would chime in, even speaking from my own experience, a lot of the same things: the network, the visibility, the career opportunity, kind of making sense of your pre-MBA career. That's all from the perspective of people who've recently done it. Would really love to hear a career management perspective on this. And I know Abby has kind of a framework or a model that she uses to think about the value from both a short-term and long-term perspective. Abby, could you share some of that with us?
Thanks, Jessica. Happy to. So I think I'll touch on a couple of things that have already been said, but I guess I'll probably take more of a long-term lens. So the three things to think about, I believe, we've talked a lot about career and enabling a career pivot, particularly I think through the full-time 2-year programs where you have access to an internship. That's really short term, but long term in terms of career, it's really about having access to the C-suite and functional leadership roles that are increasingly, you know, asking for an MBA, getting on those paths. So career is one, both short term and long term. The second dimension, which Cheryl talked a lot about, is the network. It's just wonderful opportunity to be in a curated group of people and an opportunity to really mix with leaders of the future. That's the short term. Again, the long term is that you can open doors because of your network really anywhere in the world. So that's something to think about as well. And then the third dimension we haven't talked as much about yet is the actual learning that takes place when you're in business school. And that's also both short-term and long-term. Short-term, it's a great opportunity to close skill gaps that you have to allow you to make that career pivot. But long-term, I mean, I think we all are learning that we don't know what we don't know. And so we don't know what the skills are that are going to be required for future jobs, truthfully. And that having access to this lifelong learning programming that all of our business schools offer, I think is really invaluable.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned learning. I bet everyone on this call can agree or can relate that there's always some class that you pull from, whether it's you get a new job offer and then you negotiate that offer and you remember something from your negotiations class, or you need to you know, dazzle in a meeting where you've had very little preparation and you kind of think of a framework, or you think of something, you know, a case study you did with a team, but that classroom learning actually kind of pops up in unexpected ways. So it's definitely an enduring part of the value. Kelly, anything you would add to this?
Yeah, I mean, certainly to Abby's point, there are absolutely short-term and long-term advantages to the MBA. And I think that wherever you happen to be on your journey right now and making choices around what path you want to go next, this is uncertain times, and that has some challenges to it, but loads of opportunities too. And so while as you start to think about if this is the beginning of your program and where you want to go next, or if this is your second year and you're trying to make some choices for post-graduation, I think that the MBA has equipped you or will equip you with the skills that you need to take on the next adventure or the next challenge that you're faced with. And all of the schools have these great programs and these great opportunities that you get to leverage to the maximum that you're able to give those time and talents to, so that you can come out of the program ready to go and apply them to your next role or your next organization.
Yeah, I think collectively we're all of the point of view, at least among the panelists, that there's absolutely very real value in the MBA. The question really is, what has the current climate changed, or how is it changing that? And that's where I want to take our discussion next. Is just first, just to get a little bit of color for those who are not currently enrolled in programs. How are these new conditions of remote learning and some of the other adaptations we've had to make? How have programs changed? Maybe Kelly, you can start by sharing with us, how has your school adapted?
Yeah, so, you know, it absolutely happened quickly, right? For many of us, I think right around that mid-March mark was when the most dynamic changes were happening, and faculty was pivoting very quickly from a face-to-face plan for the rest of the semester into a virtual space. And so, of course, there's the tactical stuff of how do we deliver sound material? How do we keep the teaching elevated and the experience elevated? And I have to give a lot of credit to the students themselves and the current classes taking on the ability to, how do we keep doing it at a personal level? You know, just because it's virtual, we didn't want to take away the personalness of it. And so a lot of the club work was around, you know, virtual. In our world, we call it prom. So we had virtual prom, we have virtual taps, which is another social event. And we had all of these things that were standard or always in our spring cycle. And what they did and stepped up to do creatively and as a class in that community to create an experience despite being at a distance was really inspiring. So a lot of thoughtfulness and some creativity and a little bit of just, hey, let's see what happens. And so that it's created this new environment that a lot of the stuff that we are doing is actually is absolutely going to influence some of next year's choices. So some things that are going so very well might continue to be in this format because we didn't have it in this way to begin with, but it's turning out to be a really successful model that could continue once all of this sort of settles down a bit and we're back to a more standard environment. So yeah, it's very cool.
Yeah, and Abby or Kelly, I wonder if you can help us understand a little how the classroom learning experience has changed, or any feedback maybe you've heard from students about what it's been like to navigate that transition.
So in the Carlson space, we use Zoom, which is what we're on right now. And so the faculty is doing a lot of their beginning information or interactions with the student on Zoom and taking advantage of a lot of tools. So they're using breakouts as an example, and the faculty have done a lot of work offline with our instructional design team to give a really robust experience. And that includes not only just Zoom as a platform, but also some of the other techniques and the other softwares that are out there in order to make sure that the proctoring is strong, in order to make sure that there's standardization across all instructors so that the experience in one class is as consistent as it can be with the other class. And a real collaborative event and effort behind the scenes in order to make sure that the level of learning is as rigorous as it was before this environment had happened.
Yeah, and I'll just jump in, like at Carlson, at Berkeley Haas, we had to adapt very quickly. And the classroom environment, we've actually just finished finals, so we're starting to get some of the evaluations from students. And one thing that we're seeing first and foremost is just a ton of gratitude to the faculty for their hard work, making this a productive and successful semester for our students. The other thing that we're learning is just how productive remote learning can be when you've got a group of really diverse learners. So, for example, the ability to sort of customize the experience for the student depending on their needs is truly just right here in front of us in terms of, you know, sort of the next generation of this remote learning that I know all of our schools are working hard to get into. And then finally, for women, one thing I would say that I think we all probably have heard about or experienced even in Zoom calls through our work is that it's not the same people in the live classroom that are, or I should say, it's not the same people in the virtual classroom that are rising to the top, who typically are loud and raise their hand and sit in the front of the room in a traditional classroom. And so there's sort of an opportunity for either introverts or women, or however you want to think about it, people who aren't normally dominating the conversation in the traditional world. We're seeing them really shine in the virtual world. So there are some wonderful things there. And just really quickly on the extracurricular side, echoing also what Kelly said, it's been really fun to see actually the level of speakers that we've been able to bring to campus in this virtual environment. It's so much easier to do a 1-hour Zoom call, as you can imagine, than it is to hop on a plane, or even just for us in the San Francisco Bay Area, across the bridge. Rather than taking a half a day for a senior person to come to campus, we can actually bring a lot of people to this virtual environment. And that's been really exciting, I think, for our students.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that virtual technology as kind of a way of leveling the playing field in the classroom, but I'm sure Moira and Cheryl, you might be able to relate to this, that as a woman in an MBA program, there's definitely a gender dynamic that's present. That you have to learn how to navigate, right? You have to learn how to put your hand up and how to insert yourself, particularly with professors who use a certain style that kind of feeds competitiveness in the classroom. So that's honestly a really exciting, maybe possibly only short term, but we'll see how things unfold. Really exciting shift, I think, for women. I want to explore a little bit about what all these changes mean, not just adapting the classroom setting or some of the social stuff, but also what it means for jobs, what it means for our recruiting outlook. And we'll kind of start this with our career management partners here, but what are you seeing? What's changing for MBA candidates as they're looking for internships or looking for full-time positions?
Kelly, you go ahead if you want to start.
Okay, I didn't want to jump in. So some of the things that are changing, employers are looking for opportunities to engage with our students in different ways, right? To sort of the previous comment around the senior leaders that we're able to have access to now because it's so much more easy. The recruiters have relied for years on site visits and coming to campus and doing info sessions and those types of interactions, which of course are not available to us right now. And so recruiters are working hard to create interaction with the students in the same level of authenticity that some of those others' experiences might have. And they're challenged a bit to try and communicate what their culture is like if you can't go to the building and see it, right? Or if you can't actually be part of the room where they hold their big presentations or something to that effect. So on their side, they're making sure that they don't lose good talent and that the access to the student is as rich as it always has been. And so Career Centers, I speak for ours, we're trying to figure out how do we host virtual events in the fall if we're really used to doing, 200-person events that in all likelihood might face some challenges. How do we accommodate and adjust so that there's an interaction that can still happen and be really valuable? From a job placement standpoint, and there was a little bit of shakiness right when it happened in March. And I'll speak for Carlson. We had a couple organizations that made some changes impacting less than 10 students. But as we sit here in May, for Carlson, we're almost at 100% placement for our interns, which is what we're normally at about this time of year. So on our internship side, it's about the same. And on the full-time side, it is a little bit slower because I think companies are taking a wait and see approach. And so it's a little bit quieter than it has been traditionally in springs, but they're still very eager to talk to the students. And they're still every day an employer reaching out and asking us, hey, do you have anybody for this role or that role? It's just a little bit of some of the bigger organizations that have larger employee populations we're noticing may be taking on 10 people instead of 12. And so it's still bringing in new talent, but taking a little bit of a cautious approach because they don't want to have to let anybody go or adjust some of their current employee impacts. They're trying to balance that out. So that's kind of what I'm seeing over in the Midwest. Yeah.
And out here in Berkeley, we are, I'll speak to sort of what's happening now and what we're talking about for fall. So what's happening now is jobs are still coming in, and it's actually pretty remarkable, but not really when you think about the value, again, of an MBA community. We put the call out to alumni, like I'm sure, in fact, I know all programs have done this, and alumni have really responded by creating summer projects, where they maybe previously wouldn't have been able to bring on a full-fledged summer intern, and so on. And so what companies are talking about right now is sort of how to make this virtual internship a success. And so we're partnering with companies on that, and we're learning a lot that we will be able to apply to the fall. So as we start to think about next year and what to expect, our employer partners have shared they want to keep hiring, and they just don't know. Kelly made this point really well. They just don't know what those numbers will look like, but they will be on campus. Mm-hmm. And they're looking to us for guidance and partnership on the best way to deliver that connection with the students. That's really what they want still, is to be able to meet all of you and to connect. And so it's up to us to figure out the most effective way to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I want to get perspective from Moira and Cheryl on this. Since you've recently, in a couple of years ago, came out of your MBA programs, and I graduated at the same time as you did, and we just didn't have any of this complexity and this uncertainty when we graduated, right? And I'm wondering if you put yourself in the shoes of somebody who's maybe in their second year right now, or first year, looking for an internship or going in for an internship. What do you think you might do differently to take advantage of all of this change and sort of need to real-time adapt? Like how might you respond in a way to really ensure that you are capturing the total value of your MBA or potential value of the MBA, dealing with everything that's going on? Anything you might maybe have some advice for those who are dialed in?
Yeah, I mean, when I think about it, I think about my first year. So I interned with ZS and then went there full time. So I was pretty, busy my first year, just applying to a bunch of different jobs. I was kind of all over the place. So I think if I had this opportunity of not kind of going to all of the different firms and being able to do things virtually, I would actually free up a little bit more of my time to focus on continuing to network, and then also the academia as well. I feel like my winter quarter, we were on quarters at UCLA, my winter quarter was like crazy recruiting, constantly, pushing for consulting, go. And I feel like my winter quarter and spring quarter of my first year, academically, I was kind of a little bit more on the less focused track of that. And I think that being able to be virtual for a lot of this job recruitment and prepping and all of that, I think would actually be able to give me a lot more time to be able to like fully round out my MBA experience, especially my first year. Because when I think back on it, it really was like a recruiting push, and not saying that it's not right now for you guys, but yeah, that's probably what I would think about, specifically being able to have that opportunity to be virtual. I think I would look at it probably as an opportunity in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm. Cheryl,
yeah, I would really second what Moira said. You should think about the benefits of, doing a virtual interview. You are at home in a comfortable space. You know your surroundings, and it's a little bit easier. You don't have to, drive anywhere, commute anywhere, fly anywhere. So it's a little bit of less, I think, stress on you. You can put that time, towards, developing your star stories, practicing, researching, things like that. And I think, with what everyone else said, being able to connect to alumni more, I think, it's a great time now to reach out. I think also a lot of people's schedules, just working from home, everyone's schedule is kind of like a little off, I think, including myself. So I think a lot of people would be also just more understanding, more willing to do chats virtually now, and being able to connect, share their advice, things like that. And I think that's just just one of the benefits of this whole what's going on right now, and you should really look into that and try to take advantage of that, and just also use the time to connect to your other classmates. Everyone's kind of going through the same process. Everyone is probably anxious, concerned, and so just be able just connect virtually. It's not always going to be the same as in person, but I think just connecting in general is just better than nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you hit on a really big opportunity there, which is because of the anxiety and uncertainty. My sense is that the alumni networks are a little bit stronger right now, that there's a little bit more of a sense of, I want to look out for the people, for the current students in the program, because I want to give back to my program. And so I think Abby mentioned, reaching out to alums to create opportunities for internships. That's a really good example of the openness of your alumni network to support you. So if you are entering a program or currently in a program, you probably have a little bit more immediate access to your alums right now, because they're a little bit more sensitive to wanting to look out for you. Or at least that's kind of the feeling that I have from my school. And it sounds like some of you share that too. But kind of keeping on this theme of recommendations, I know we only have a few minutes left, but I want to give Kelly and Abby an opportunity as well. Any advice for current students or students who are just about to start about how to navigate this time and sort of take advantage of it and make sure that it doesn't diminish the value of the MBA?
So I think this is a great opportunity in so many ways. Always a fan of MBA. I am even more so. And after this, like, how we do business is never going to be the same. And to be a part of your MBA program and be in what can sort of be argued as one of the safest places to try things out and experiment and challenge the thinking, this is a great time to do it as a student or as an incoming student. And also to pick up skills and abilities because of all of the ways that we are doing business differently. Like, you get to be a native of that, right? You get to grow through that and then ultimately apply those learnings throughout your career. So I just think this is a wonderful time to, and an advantage in some ways to get into the programs and take as much as you can out of them.
Mm-hmm.
Well said, Kelly. I guess I would just add that it's also just a great time to be a part of a new community. Community is, I think, what we're all seeking right now as we shelter in place. And this is just, it's not that you're going to let go of previous communities that you've been part of, but this is just one more group that's going to have your back. It's also pretty amazing to be in school during changing economic times, just to have access to business school faculty and research and current thinking, to be in that ecosystem while you're experiencing churn outside, to be talking about it on a daily basis is pretty incredible. I've had the benefit of working at Berkeley Haas through previous recessions, and it's been fun to see how the community comes together around thought leadership in times like this.
Yeah. I want to see if we can take a couple of the questions that have popped up in the chat. So here's one. If you have more than 10 years of experience, do employers still find getting an MBA valuable? And are there leadership development programs or LDPs for people who have more years of experience if you enter a full-time program? I want to answer the second piece of this question because I did an LDP. I had 9 years of experience before my MBA, and I think I was right on the cusp. I think if I had too many more years, it probably wouldn't have been a valuable investment of my time. It was not so much that the employer wouldn't have looked at me. It just, I was, in a program to path to director, and I wanted to get there quickly. But I would say my personal perspective on this is that it is always valuable. Like, I just don't think that I think more career experience, you kind of make more of it with an MBA. There's probably a too little, but I think that's a really specific, decision for an individual. But I would love to hear from anyone on the panel, just what's your perspective on this? If you have more than 10 years of experience, is it worth it?
I mean, Jessica, I think you answered it very well. You're a great example. So
Okay.
Students, and by the way, students, and I think this is one of the questions I'm seeing as well, students come in with all kinds of different backgrounds and levels of experience. We tend to see students who are working professional students have more experience and the full-time students have less experience, but there are always people that are successful in, you know, sort of the opposite scenario. So find the program that's right for you. It's really a very personal choice.
Right. Yeah, that probably can't be said enough, that the time you invest up front in finding that right program is absolutely worth every minute that you spend.
Mm-hmm.
There's another question from an early career change student. What's your advice for someone who's getting an MBA early on, but with limited pre-MBA experience?
So go ahead, Moira.
I can jump in on this one. I was fairly early MBA as well. The company that I worked for previously, though, did kind of tend to set up people to go to MBA, so it was something I was expecting to do. But I was definitely competing against people who had more years in the workforce. And I think it was just making sure that I was aware of that and being able to play to my strengths when I was recruiting with certain companies. So I wasn't necessarily shooting for things that I didn't have a ton of experience in. I was trying to stick to my strengths and tailor my strengths as best as I could, with acknowledging that I might not have as much work experience, but that can be made up for in a lot of the other areas that I felt like I had. So just pushing for that. Yeah.
So I would just pile on, as from a career standpoint, there's so many variables as to what makes a good candidate and what doesn't make a good candidate. And while, you know, there are somewhat black and white answers for that type of question, it negates all the other things that you would bring to the table. That being said, I would encourage people to really look closely at the type of target that they have. Generally speaking, some of the LDRP programs won't consider you if you have under 3 years of experience. And so you don't want to take yourself out of the running. And you want to recognize that your classmates who are going to be going for similar roles may have more experience, and how competitive you are against that body of students. And so while on an individual level, there are always exceptions and there are always ways that that's not going to be the rule. But there's also fairly good patterns on a little bit more experience helps you be more competitive in the process on the whole.
I think that's probably the last question that we have time for. Is that right, Michelle? Okay.
That's right. I'm sorry. What a great conversation. Jessica, I'll let you wrap it up first here.
Yeah, I don't have anything else to add. Our panelists have been so wonderful. Thank you guys so much for your time today. This is like I said, anything connected to Forte is always feels like a great use of my time. So really happy to be able to join you here. And really appreciate the thoughtfulness and the passion from each of our panelists today.
Yeah, I have to say, well, thank you, Jessica, so very much for moderating such a great conversation. And to our panelists, our partners have just gone above and beyond through all of this and supporting our current students, our incoming students, all of our audiences. So we could not have done this series without you. So we're so thankful for each of you. And so much appreciate your thought leadership in this space. And there were definitely a couple questions that we weren't able to get to. And I know all the panelists would be more than happy to connect over LinkedIn and continue the conversation or answer any more specific questions. But just want to say a thank you again, and good luck, stay safe and keep in touch. And Forte's here for you. So thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.